Alright guys, welcome to this short online recap of our last Maya and modeling session. I'm just gonna go ahead and quickly go over the features again that I told you about modeling wise, what you can do to alter the shape of your mesh, and how to basically finish the model that we can later use to texture it, rig it, whatever, when I'm back in about a month. So I've got Maya right here, and you probably remember that we can easily add a 3D object by, for example, going to the poly modeling section on this shelf and selecting the cube, for example. We can also go to the create button and choose the cube from here, and by pressing F we can focus or frame that object, and we now have our object pretty much in the center of the screen in the 3D viewport. Again, if you cannot remember, by pressing Alt and the left mouse button, hold the Alt key down and you can tumble around in the view. Again, by pressing Alt, you can using the middle mouse button to drag the window along to shift the view, and you can actually use the right mouse button to zoom in and out by moving the cursor up and down. You could also use the mouse wheel for that, but it's not that precise, so it's not really used by professionals. But as a beginner, well, I used that for years myself, just the mouse wheel, because I wasn't used to using the right mouse button. Anyway, pressing F again. You can of course translate it by using the 3D gizmo. If you don't have that, you can press W, which is a shortcut, or go to the left side where there is a button for the movement translation, which it is called. There's also rotation, for which the shortcut is E, and there's also scaling, for which the shortcut is R. If you decide to be a bit more precise, you can also just type in the 3D transform values. Oh no, I don't want to save. By going to the channel box editor, which you can see here on the right, there are 3 tabs on the very right. We go to the first one, channel box editor, and here we go. We have some values for the translate Y, X, Y, and Z. I don't know. Let's just type in 2 or something, and then you can see that the coordinates of the cube have actually changed. You can also click on the value, use the middle mouse button to just drag the mouse inside the 3D viewport, and it would work just as fine. Now, Maya does differentiate between 2 things when it comes to a 3D object. A 3D object is basically are basically 2 objects, so to speak. We have the transform that we just used, which controls where the 3D object is located in the 3D space and how it is oriented. But there's also the shape, which is kind of parented to that transform object. So if you go back into Maya, and in the example of a cube again, we can do that, but to move the object, but we cannot actually change its appearance. And we can do that by hold right click on the object. We are right now in object mode. This is the default mode for every object to move it around, but we can also go to different modes to alter the shape of the object. For example, the edge mode right on the top. We can select the edges of the object and move them around by using the tools I showed you before. There's also vertex, which controls the vertex, or the plural is vertices. It controls the points which make up this 3D object, and face means, of course, the polygonal rectangle face which this object is made of. I just want to show you guys again how the basic modeling methods work. If we have that face selected, for example, we press down Shift and right click on the object, which gives us a different menu. For example, we can do extrude face, which actually creates another face which is now stuck inside it, and we can pull that out by using that gizmo, and thus we have created a new face, or actually, if you count them, 4 new faces. Keep in mind that if you do a extrude face and just leave it there, you will have a double face. So the extruded face is still there. It's just basically laying on top of the old face. So just keep that in mind. A lot of errors can happen from that when you actually extrude something, but you didn't know you did it. You don't know you did it. Yeah, but there are also a few other modeling methods. For example, the multi-cut, which is again hold down Shift and right click on the object, or right press on the object. And we have, for example, the multi-cut tool, which offers a few of different modeling options. We can go ahead and add some points on our own, which I always think is not very advisable, because it just creates a structure which we cannot not really use, because it's not a rectangular object. It's an n-gon, that's how they call it, consists of more than four points, which can result in a lot of errors. I'm actually going to keep that and show you guys the error it produces. It's more advisable to again press Shift, right click on the object and choose the multi-cut tool, and then by pressing Control and just select an edge, go to an edge with your mouse and press that, you can create so-called edge loops, which well, as you can see, it creates like a basically a loop onto your geometry, and that only works for good geometry. For example, when you only have worked with the correct modeling techniques, like using rectangular shapes. We cannot do that on here. It just wouldn't let us. Actually, this whole cube on the right here is basically affected. As you can see, it wouldn't go the way around because we don't have a good topology here. Topology is like a synonym of the structure of the object. So topology describes how the object is, how the structure is made. A good topology is considered using only rectangular polygons. We could also press. Well, we are right now in the default view state, which is when you press 1. We can also press 3. Here we go, which results in a smooth mesh. This mesh, however, is just a preview, so we can go back by just pressing 1. It previews how the mesh would look like if it had more polygons. And as you can already see, it produces around our favorite face here a few problems. If we want to make it permanent, that smooth shape, and we want to actually work with more polygons, we could do Shift right click and then go to smooth, and that would actually put that preview that we earlier seen onto the object, resulting in more polygons. But that having a lot of polygons, of course, means that you are not able to work with it so smoothly any longer. It's more meant for a later process, to get details into the shape and to really get into the fine detail. And so that is why the preview button exists, because we of course want to go back and work on the overall shape of the object, which would be very hard to do so right now. But now that is tessellated, tessellation means that there are multiple, that we subdivided the faces. Can show you another thing, which is by pressing or by selecting face again. You could select anything, edges, points, wouldn't matter. And when you press B, we turn on the soft selection mode. By holding down the B key and dragging your mouse along the viewport, we can change the zone of influence, or we can change the influence of the smooth selection. This is what it's called. If we now take that face and move it, we can see that it moves more organic rather than when B is not selected, which would happen if we press B again. The mode is then no longer active. It's of course not as organic because it only moves this one single face. By pressing B again, we can do that in a more organic way. Oops. Alright then. There are a few other things I wanted to show you. If we have that cube, and let's just for the sake of the argument take that cube and get another cube. By the way, if you want to rotate something more evenly, we can hold down the J key and it actually snaps to, I think, 10 degree values. Alright, we now have two objects, and let's say we want to connect them. There's one way of doing this. We can select both of them and press the Shift key, hold down the Shift key, then again press the right mouse button and go to Combine. And this combines two objects into one, which means we can now edit it like it's one object, because it now obviously is one object. So we can press Shift, right click, and well, actually not, we want to select the edges first, so we just go right click edge, and then we can select the these edges here, which are sort of countering each other, and then we can press the Shift key again, right click, and we can do something like the bridge tool down here, and then it would actually connect those faces or create another face. So this is a way to do that. There are a few other things. For example, this edge right now is, if you go into the object mode, it's a hard edge. We can also soften that by selecting that edge. We can select, or we can decide that Maya wants to calculate it in a more smooth surface way, which is when we press, hold down the Shift key again, press right click, go to Soften Harden Edges, and then a Soften Edge. And then Maya would actually soften that edge, and it's no longer visible, which is very handy when it comes to organic objects. But we can, in this case, harden it again because it doesn't make so much sense. It's just like a brick or something at the moment. Also, if we have the problem of, for example, a doubled face, which of course happens when we do an extrusion. The shortcut for this, by the way, is Option, Control or Command E, and we just leave it. And of course, things just wouldn't work from now because there are actually two vertices which are laying on top of each other. And if you would want to merge those vertices, so this problem would no longer occur, we can select all of those. We can actually select all of this object and press on Merge Vertices, and go to Merge Vertices again, and then we would have the option to determine the threshold, so to speak. Everything beneath this value in distance merges the vertices, and if we crank that number up, okay, it can get higher than that. That's a bad example, but plus like 10, no, it's not possible. All right, well, it should have done that already. No. So if you select both of, let's try that again. Just select those vertices, press merge vertices, merge vertices. Okay. Now it has done it. Maya has some weird bugs sometimes. This PowerPoint presentation is inside the Moodle course if you want to take a look at that. Excuse me. As I said, the a face is basically a plane, or this, it's a face. It's pretty much all self-explanatory. You just should keep in mind that you are not allowed to use anything else than this, and this. So if there are any more connection points, or any more edges connecting to that point, or any more vertices creating a face, for example, triangles are not allowed, and n-gons are not allowed. You basically only have the option to use a rectangular face, because that's doing that would be result in smooth topology, and wouldn't lead to weird transformations or weird deformations as we've seen earlier. Let's take a look again at this object. What we have done to it is all saved into Maya. Maya is a node-based system, but it doesn't tell you that's the problem. So if we have that object, we can see in the channel box editor, there's the p cube, which is like the transform of the object. As we can see, there are transform values, but there's also the shape, which is the p cube 3 shape. So this is the actual objects, and we do have inputs. Inputs are the things that we have done to that specific mesh. And if I, for example, would do an extrude, we would have another extrude in here. We could, of course, change some things in the extrusion. So maybe just like this. So it's actually possible to alter the things you have done to a mesh in reverse. But if we do it in maybe this, oh yeah, I know. Has it crashed? Oh, thank you, Maya. Thank you so much. God. No, we don't. Yeah, thank you. So if we have a mesh like this, do some things to it, do an extrusion, do another extrusion. We can see in the channel editor that there are inputs. We can alter these inputs also in the attribute editor, which is right here. We have our p cube, we have our p cube shape, and we have the extrusions that we have done. And after this, only the materials, which are these two shapes, are also saved in that object. If we would, the problem is that all the deformations we are doing to a mesh are saved in so-called nodes. These are nodes. And we don't want that most of the time, because it just eats up all of our RAM and makes Maya more unstable. If we do, for such a simple mesh, it's alright, but if we have a human with thousands of or hundreds of thousands of alterations, of deformations, etc., and it's all saved into that mesh, it's just very unstable. So we can delete that, and I would recommend you to do that once in a while, especially when you're done modeling, or when you at a certain step. you can go to Edit, Delete by Type History if you have that object selected, and just press that. You can see we now have only our P cube shape. So this is the node for the node which controls the transformations, like the where it is in the 3D viewport, the object. This controls how the object looks like, the shape, which we can alter as with the methods I showed you before. And this, as I said, are only material nodes. There is, however, another modeling technique that I want to show you, which I already covered in class, of course, which is the drawing of polygons onto a mesh, which is called retopology. It's done in the industry, pretty much on every organic mesh, and it's one of the most hated procedures, let's put it this way, but sadly it's necessary. If we have, for example, this face, which I'm just going to create really quick. Here we go. Have an eye, have another eye, and I don't know. There you go. A mouth. Just looks brilliant, doesn't it? Of course, the topology of that is just utter crap, and we can now select every object which this object consists of, combine that, as I told you earlier. So it's just, as you can see here on the left, follow my mouse, not the select tools. It's sphere 1, sphere 2, and sphere 3, and we can now combine that, and it's all just sphere 4. And we still have those transform nodes, and which wouldn't be there if we delete the history of all objects. Then we just have P sphere 4. We can now improve the topology by basically creating a new model, which would be, if we select that model, one option is to make that object alive. That's how it's called. So we can press that little button right here, and now we go into the modeling toolkit, which is here on the right, actually in between the channel box editor and the attribute editor. Press on that, and now we are offered a bunch of different objects, and we should use quad draw. And quad draw enables us to actually, if we have that live mode selected, draw quads onto that mesh, and we do so by just clicking onto the mesh, and then by pressing Shift we can basically fill the faces, if that makes sense. And we are only allowed to draw rectangles, no triangles, etc., because Maya has already covered us here. What we want to do is to have a very nice clean topology. So if we have to take a look at our PDF, we can see that, well, this is a good example. We have two humans, and this one is a very clean, good topology. They're like edge loops around the eyes, around the area of the mouth, around the ears and the nose, and everything is made of quads, and they are roughly the same size most of the time, or mostly not very deformed. If we take a look at the object on the left, however, we can see that there are a lot of triangles. The topology is just terrible. It looks terrible already, but it especially becomes a problem later when we want to deform and animate our object. For example, doing a facial expression with this kind of topology would be fairly easy, because the edge loops actually flow, or are quite similar to the anatomy of a human face. this one isn't. There's a little cheat sheet on the next slide, which shows how, on a human face at least, the loop flow would be, yeah, most optimal. So there's a loop flow around each eyes, which then later becomes a larger loop flow around the mouth area, of course. So we would get nicer deformations later, which will come very in handy when it comes to animating the character. So if we just keep on drawing these faces onto a character, I would advise you to do it first very roughly, and later, actually, if you press W, we can see that we have created another object, which is called polysurface 1. We can isolate that view actually if we press on the little button right here. So we just have that, and if we don't like that, we can select that object here and press H, which hides it, and press H again, and that it would show. If you don't have that window right here, which is called the outliner, you can go into Windows and go to Outliner, and then you have this index of objects inside your Maya scene. And now if we have covered the entire object using the quad draw tool, we just decide, just imagine we have just done that. We can go ahead and smooth it all by, of course, going to smooth, and then it all looks so much better already. And then we have a clean mesh of our initial object that we modeled, and it's ready for animating. So yes, if I missed anything, I probably write something into the forum, inside the Moodle course. If you guys have any questions, also don't hesitate to ask. And well, I guess I see you all again in about a month, when we will start to do texturing on our objects. And yeah, I'm very looking forward towards the models you have modeled. Right then, until then, have fun, and yeah, see ya.